December 19th, 1944. Verdun, France. The most important military conference of the Western campaign is about to begin, and one general is going to promise something that everyone in the room believes is physically impossible. The Battle of the Bulge is 4 days old. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt's Army Group B has punched a 60-mile hole through the American line in the Ardennes forest, driving 3 armies westward through fog and snow and the shattered remnants of the 8th Corps. 3 armoured divisions and 18 infantry divisions are pouring through the gap. The 2nd SS Panzer Division is 48 hours from the Meuse River. Kampfgruppe Piper, the armoured spearhead of the 1st SS Panzer Division under SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Piper, 60-plus Tigers and Panthers, and half-tracks driving through secondary roads in the Belgian Ardennes at speeds that have outrun their own supply chain, is the most dangerous single formation in the West at this moment, and no coherent American blocking force stands between it and the river. The town of Bastogne, critical road junction, the point through which 6 major roads converge and without which the German advance cannot be adequately supplied, is about to be surrounded. The 101st Airborne Division is being rushed there to hold it, but without relief, without armour, without the ability to break out of what is rapidly becoming an encirclement. The 101st will be destroyed or forced to surrender. Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower convenes an emergency conference at a cold, poorly heated French army barracks in Verdun with his senior commanders. He enters the room and tells the men around the table that he wants to see only cheerful faces, that the Germans have given them an opportunity by coming into the open where Allied firepower can find them. The room is not, initially, cheerful. Then Eisenhower turns to General George S. Patton Jr., commanding the US Third Army, and asks when he can attack northward to relieve Bastogne. Patton says, December 22nd, 3 days. The room goes quiet in a way that the official record does not capture, and the participants' memoirs do not fully convey. Every senior officer present, men who have been moving large formations for 3 years in 2 theatres of war, who understand what it takes to reorient a corps, much less an army, understands immediately what Patton is claiming he can do. He is claiming he can take an army of 250,000 men, currently engaged in combat facing east, disengage it, rotate it 90 degrees north, march it 100 miles through roads clogged with retreating traffic in the worst winter in living European memory, and strike a relieving blow against a German force that will be waiting for it. In 72 hours, the logistics of this movement are, on paper, almost comically impossible. A single division on the move occupies a road column approximately 1,100 vehicles long. Trucks, tanks, artillery prime movers, ammunition carriers, fuel tankers, field kitchens, medical vehicles, and moving one division through a road network, already under pressure, requires a traffic control plan that normally takes days to develop. Third Army has 15 divisions. Moving them simultaneously through a network, also carrying retreating formations in the opposite direction, is not a problem any standard operational timeline addresses. The Army's own manual suggests 72 hours minimum for a corps-level reorientation under normal conditions. Patton is claiming he can move an entire army in the same window. Eisenhower, who has known Patton since they were junior officers together, who has seen him dismissed and reinstated because there was no one else who could do what he does, looks at him for a long moment and says, "When you say that, do you mean it?" Patton says, "I do." He does not elaborate or qualify. He does not offer the caveats that every other officer present would have attached to a promise of this magnitude. It is not the boast of a reckless man. It is the statement of a commander who has already, in the 4 days since the German offensive began, been doing the work that makes the statement true, and who is the only person in that room who knows it. George Patton had been preparing for this moment for longer than anyone in the room at Verdun knew, and preparing for it in a way that reveals as much about how he thought as about what he accomplished. The week before the German offensive began on December 16th, 1944, Patton had been watching the intelligence coming across his desk with an attention that his staff found, in retrospect, almost prescient, though prescience is not the word Patton himself would have used. Intelligence is only prescient if it is acted upon. Patton acted on it. The German build-up in the Eifel region east of the Ardennes, the concentration of armor and infantry, the radio silence that intelligence analysts at SHAEF interpreted as disciplinary procedure, but Patton read as deliberate operational deception preceding an offensive, convinced him by December 12th that a major German attack through the Ardennes was not merely possible, but imminent, not in the way that intelligence officers use the word possible to cover themselves when they are uncertain. Imminent in the operational sense, days away, not weeks. He called his staff together on December 12th, 4 days before the attack began, and ordered them to begin planning 3 separate contingency operations simultaneously. One for an attack northeast if the Germans struck north of the current line. One for an attack north if the main effort came through the Ardennes centre against the 8th Corps positions. One for a thrust west if the German offensive drove hard for the Meuse and required Third Army to cover the Allied southern flank while other forces reorganized. He told his planners to work all 3 simultaneously, to have the movement orders drafted, the fuel allocation calculated, the road march sequences mapped, the artillery displacement timetables written, the traffic control plans distributed to military police units in advance, the engineer bridge load classifications confirmed for every route each axis of advance would require, before they knew which plan they would execute. He told Brigadier General Halley Maddox, his G3 operations officer, to build each plan to a standard where it could be activated with a single telephone call. Not a call followed by hours of order writing. A single call, after which the wheels would begin turning. Maddox later described the instruction as the kind of thing Patton said regularly, the kind of demand that, in another army, would have produced polite agreement and quiet non-compliance from staff officers who considered it an unrealistic. In Third Army, it produced the plans Patton asked for, because the staff had been trained over 4 months to treat Patton's operational standards as real requirements rather than commander's rhetoric. The rest of the American army did not have a commander who believed, as an operational axiom, that the crisis you fail to anticipate is the one that destroys you. Patton believed it with the conviction of a man who had watched it happen to others. His staff thought he was being characteristically aggressive in his planning. He was actually building the machinery that would make the Verdun promise possible, and building it before the crisis existed, which is the only time that building is genuinely useful. Third Army in December 1944 was not a conventional military headquarters in any meaningful sense of that phrase. Under Patton's command since August 1st, 1944, when it became operational in France at the breakout from Normandy, it had developed a command culture that was qualitatively different from any other American headquarters in the European theatre. Patton had driven his staff, Chief of Staff Major General Hugh Gaffey, Maddox in operations, and the corps commanders under him, to a standard of operational planning speed and execution fidelity that the Army's doctrinal manuals did not describe, could not fully account for, and that most of his contemporaries in the American Army frankly did not believe was consistently achievable at formation scale. The standard in conventional military planning was that a corps-level movement order required a minimum of 72 hours from concept to execution. Third Army standard, developed through 4 months of continuous operations from the Normandy breakout through the pursuit across France and into the Saar, was a fraction of that. In the pursuit across France between August and September 1944, 500 miles in 26 days, sweeping through Brittany, crossing the Seine, driving toward the German border, Patton had demonstrated that large-scale movement at a tempo the enemy could not anticipate was itself a tactical and operational weapon of the first order. An enemy who cannot predict where you will be next cannot organize a defense against you, regardless of how many men he has. He had built an army that could move faster than doctrine said armies could move. At Verdun, he was about to prove how far that capability extended under conditions that doctrine said made rapid movement impossible. The German offensive that makes this movement necessary, Operation Wacht am Rhein, commits 28 divisions to the assault. The 6th Panzer Army under Sepp Dietrich drives in the north with the 1st SS Panzer Division and the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitlerjugend. The 5th Panzer Army under General Hasso von Manteuffel, more tactically gifted than Dietrich, strikes in the center with the 2nd Panzer Division, 116th Panzer Division, and Panzer Lehr, driving toward Bastogne and the Meuse beyond it. The plan is to cross the Meuse, capture Antwerp, and sever the supply lines of every Allied formation north of the Ardennes. Most of Hitler's senior commanders believe the objective is unachievable, that German logistics can sustain an advance to the Meuse at best, and only then by capturing Allied fuel dumps along the way. Field Marshal Model has argued for a more limited objective. Von Rundstedt shares his skepticism. Neither changes the plan. Hitler's order stands, and on December 16th, in conditions of total surprise facilitated by strict radio silence and the complacency of Schaeff intelligence officers, Wacht am Rhein achieves a penetration that sends shockwaves from Versailles to London. December the 20th, 1944, 24 hours after the Verdun Conference. One day after Patton made his promise, Third Army's advance elements are already moving north, and the movement they are conducting is unlike anything the American Army has attempted in this theater. Patton has activated the Center Contingency Plan, the Ardennes North Attack, with a single phone call to Maddox at 10:45 on December 19th, immediately after the Verdun Conference ends. The pre-built orders go out within the hour. Third Corps under Major General John Millikin, the formation that will make the drive to Bastogne, begins its reorientation from facing east to facing north at 1400 hours on December 19th, before most Corps headquarters staffs in the American Army would have finished writing the orders for a move of this type. The 4th Armored Division under Major General Hugh Gaffey, which will lead the Third Corps advance, begins its road march north in the early evening of December 19th, its led elements covering 30 miles before midnight, in conditions that weather reports describe as movement prohibitive. What makes this movement extraordinary at the ground level, beyond the command decisions and the pre-built logistics and the planning that enabled it, is what it actually looks like and feels like to the men executing it. The roads north are not empty. They carry the retreating elements of 8th Corps, vehicles without fuel abandoned on the roadsides, men without units walking south, trucks loaded with headquarters equipment of formations that have been overrun and are moving west and south away from the German advance in the disorganized, frightened way that defeated formations move, without formation or coherent direction. Third Army's columns are moving against this flow, north through south-moving traffic, on roads that have been packed into sheet ice by the wheels and tracks of thousands of vehicles, and that catch the headlights of the advancing column in a way that makes every driver feel as though he is navigating a surface designed specifically for the destruction of vehicles. Temperatures are -15 degrees Celsius. The bocage and forest of the Ardennes Plateau are accumulating snow at the rate of an inch per hour. The M4 Sherman tank drivers of the 4th Armored are steering with differential throttle, varying the power to the left and right tracks independently, rather than the mechanical steering tillers, because the tillers lose purchase on ice-packed roads and the tank slides sideways rather than turns when they are applied. Artillery prime movers, the half-tracks and trucks that tow 155mm howitzers weighing 6 tons, are losing traction on grades that would be trivial in dry conditions and are being assisted around hairpin bends by the gun crews themselves. Men putting their shoulders against the gun trails in temperatures that freeze exposed skin in minutes and physically pushing 6-ton weapons around curves that the vehicles pulling them cannot navigate without sliding into the frozen ditch below. The infantrymen of the 26th and 81st Infantry Divisions are in many places walking, because the roads are too congested with traffic moving in both directions for truck convoys to maintain any speed, and walking in Ardennes Winter conditions in field jackets designed for autumn France is an exercise in sustained physical suffering that the men enduring it will remember for the rest of their lives. And despite all of it, the ice, the retreating traffic, the cold, the darkness, the snow accumulating on every horizontal surface, including the vision blocks of tank commanders trying to see what is ahead of them, the movement proceeds. Not smoothly, not without crisis at every level from individual vehicle to division, but it proceeds, and that is what Patton built Third Army to do. The crisis that tests the entire operation arrives on December 22nd, the day Patton has promised to reach Bastogne. The 4th Armoured Division's Combat Command B, driving north along the main axis toward the encircled town, runs into the prepared defensive positions of the 5th Parachute Division and elements of the 26th Volksgrenadier Division that the Germans have placed specifically to block the relief route. The terrain south of Bastogne concentrates the approach routes into a series of narrow corridors between forested ridgelines where the defenders have positioned anti-tank guns and infantry in mutually supporting positions that cover every axis a column of Shermans can use. At the village of Chaumont, Combat Command B's lead elements enter the main street at 0830 hours on December 22nd and are immediately taken under fire from two directions. Anti-tank guns firing from a tree line on the left flank and from a stone farmhouse on the right that has been converted into a strongpoint with a field of fire covering the entire approach road. In 40 minutes, Combat Command B loses 12 Shermans and cannot advance. The column stops. The radio traffic from Combat Command B to 3rd Corps headquarters describes a situation that will require significant artillery preparation and infantry support to resolve preparation and support that under normal operational conditions would take hours to organize and execute. The 4th Armoured's advance has stalled on the day it was supposed to reach Bastogne. Patton's promise is about to be broken, and in Bastogne, the 101st Airborne, which has been holding the town for 6 days with dwindling ammunition and no air resupply because the weather has grounded Allied transport aircraft continuously since the battle began, is fighting a battle of attrition it cannot sustain much longer. Patton's response to the Chaumont crisis is the decision that reveals most completely how he understood armoured warfare and what made him different from other commanders of his generation and rank. He does not reinforce Combat Command B. He does not call for additional air support or request that 3rd Corps headquarters organize a coordinated multi-battalion assault on the Chaumont position. The responses that conventional operational doctrine would prescribe and that would cost hours, the 101st Airborne does not have. He shifts the axis of the entire advance, redirecting Combat Command A of the 4th Armoured Division south of Chaumont on a secondary road that bypasses the German bloc, a route that military police have not yet opened for heavy traffic. That engineer reconnaissance has not confirmed for tank weights, and that maps show crossing two bridges whose load classifications are unknown. Combat Command in A's vehicles will test the bridges by crossing them. If a bridge fails under tank weight, Combat Command A's engineers will repair it or find a ford. The answer to an obstacle, in Third Army, is never to stop. It is to find the way around it while something else holds the obstacle in place. Simultaneously, Combat Command Reserve continues to press the Chaumont position frontally, not to break through, but to hold the German defenders in place so they cannot redeploy against the flanking movement that is already beginning. It is a maneuver that requires Combat Command A's column commander to make load classification judgments for bridges by observation rather than engineering survey, to navigate secondary roads by compass and dead reckoning when maps prove inaccurate, and to maintain forward momentum under conditions where a conventional operational assessment would have called for a halt pending reconnaissance. It delays the relief by 48 hours. It does not stop it, and it demonstrates the specific command philosophy that Patton had built into his division and corps commanders over 4 months, that the open flank is always preferable to the closed front, that forward momentum is almost always worth the risk of proceeding on incomplete information, and that the time spent confirming what you already suspect is almost always more expensive than the time spent discovering you were wrong. December 26th, 1944. At 1650 hours, as the light is fading over the Ardennes, and the temperature is dropping toward the coldest night of the entire campaign, a column of Shermans from the 4th Armored Division's Combat Command Reserve, led by Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, a tank commander who will become Army Chief of Staff and whose name will be given to the M1 main battle tank that equips the American Army today, breaks through the last German defensive position south of Bastogne and makes contact with the forward elements of the 101st Airborne Division's perimeter. The corridor is approximately 500 meters wide at its narrowest point. It is under observed fire from German artillery on 3 sides. The road through it is flanked by burning vehicles, American Shermans knocked out in the final push, and German anti-tank guns destroyed by the Shermans that survived. The metal still hot and smoking in the -15-degree air. The corridor is barely wide enough for a single truck, and the trucks that now begin moving through it, carrying artillery ammunition that the 101st has been rationing to a few rounds per gun per day, medical supplies for the division's overwhelmed aid stations, food for men who have been on half rations since December 22nd, do so under fire that kills drivers and destroys vehicles and requires the next vehicle in the column to push the wrecked one off the road to keep the supply flow moving. It is, by any standard, a brutal and costly operation. It is also, precisely, what Patton promised on December 19th that it would be. When German General Heinrich von Luttwitz, commanding the 47th Panzer Corps that has been attempting to take Bastogne, receives word that the relief corridor has been opened, his reaction, recorded in the notes of his operations officer, is that the operation Third Army has conducted is one that German operational doctrine would have designated as requiring a minimum of 2 weeks to plan and execute under the conditions that obtained. 2 weeks of planning, under ideal weather, on roads clear of opposing traffic, with adequate fuel reserves. Patton has done it in 9 days, through conditions that German logistics officers would have used as justification for postponing the operation entirely, with fuel reserves that required forward positioning before the crisis existed, because there was no time to position them after it began. Von Luttwitz is a professional soldier with 20 years of operational experience. He is not prone to hyperbole. When he says he cannot explain it on the terms of German operational doctrine, he means precisely that. The gap between what his doctrine says is possible and what Third Army has just produced is large enough to require a different explanation than doctrine provides. The explanation, reconstructed from Third Army, after action reports, and the accounts of Patton's staff, has several components that are individually comprehensible and collectively extraordinary. The pre-crisis contingency planning, ordered on December 12th, meant that Third Army's movement orders were not written under crisis conditions, but refined under them, a profoundly different task. Maddox's staff did not write the movement orders for the Bastogne relief on December 19th. They completed them. The command culture Patton had built meant that corps and division commanders solved implementation problems independently rather than referring them upward. When Combat Command A bypassed Chaumont on unclassified secondary roads, no one requested permission before proceeding, because permission was implicit in the order to advance. The logistical pre-positioning, fuel dumps moved north before the offensive began, traffic control distributed before the orders to execute it arrived, had been built by a staff that had run Third Army's logistics through the 400-mile pursuit across France and had learned precisely where the friction points in large-scale rapid movements lay. Third Army's logistics staff did not improvise the Bastogne relief supply chain. They executed a system they had already built for exactly this kind of demand. The relief of Bastogne and the subsequent Third Army operations through the winter and spring of 1945 confirmed the Ardennes movement as a demonstration of principle rather than an exceptional achievement. Third Army crosses the Rhine at Oppenheim on March 22, 1945. Without the weeks of preparation that Montgomery's 21st Army Group is expending to the north for Operation Plunder. Patton calls Eisenhower the following morning to report the crossing, and the call has the quality of a man reporting something that was never in doubt. By VE Day, on May 8, 1945, Third Army has liberated more territory, advanced further into Germany, and captured more prisoners, 956,000 German soldiers, taken in 10 months of continuous operations, than any other American formation in the European theatre. Its casualties, at approximately 160,000 killed and wounded across the campaign, are lower relative to distance covered and prisoners taken than any comparable formation. These are not the statistics of a reckless commander who achieved results by accepting unlimited attrition. They are the statistics of an army that had learned to move faster than the enemy's decision cycle, which is the closest thing to a permanent tactical advantage that military operations offer. The German generals who faced Patton across the entire campaign, von Lüttwitz, von Manteuffel, Model, the operational planners at OB West who tried to anticipate Third Army's axis of advance and consistently failed, were not, with the exception of a few incompetents, weak military professionals. Von Manteuffel was a superb tactical commander whose handling of the 5th Panzer Army in the Ardennes was significantly more skillful than Dietrich's to his north. Model was the most accomplished defensive specialist the German army produced. Post-war interviews with captured German senior officers return, again and again, to the same assessment. Third Army operated at a tempo their command systems had no mechanism to anticipate or counter. By the time their operational picture showed where Third Army was somewhere else. By the time their response was organized and communicated downward, Third Army had already changed direction or already succeeded. The gap between German decision cycles and patterns was not a matter of individual brilliance against individual failure. It was a matter of one army having spent 4 months building a command and logistics culture specifically oriented around speed of execution, where corps commanders solved implementation problems independently rather than requesting guidance, where logistics pre-built the infrastructure before the order to move arrived, where the institutional reflex was to act first and refine second, against an army whose command culture was optimized for a different kind of war, one in which Germany had the initiative and the time, and which had ended sometime in 1943. The Battle of the Bulge is remembered for its drama. The encircled paratroopers at Bastogne, McAuliffe's famous "nuts" reply to the German surrender demand, the Sherman tanks arriving through the snow corridor on December 26th. All of that is real, and all of it deserves the memory it receives. But the Bastogne relief is not what is most remarkable about what Third Army accomplished in December 1944. What is most remarkable is that it was not remarkable to the men who executed it. Patton's staff did not consider the Verdun promise extraordinary. They considered it executable, because they had been building toward exactly this capability for 4 months, because the planning had already been done, because the culture of the organization made the problem tractable rather than impossible. The most important thing Patton built in Third Army was not a command post or a supply system or a set of movement orders. It was the institutional conviction, at every level, from Army headquarters to tank crew, that the speed of action you can achieve is determined not by what your doctrine says is possible, but by what your preparation has made actual, and that the enemy, whatever his strength and skill, cannot defend against an army that arrives where he calculated it could not yet be. When that conviction is genuine, and when the preparation behind it is real, what looks to the outside observer like the impossible becomes, to the men executing it, simply the next step in a plan that was already written.